Yes, now just let's hope it works. Good, so let's get right into it. I will start with presentation of Platform of Trust, basic building blocks, what our technical solution is made of. Some of you might already be quite familiar with it, but just to get everybody on the same page, let's quickly go through this. I have recorded a video beforehand, so let's see if the sound works.
Video tutorials. In this video, I will present the technical solution components that Platform of Trust consists of.
Can you all hear this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yes, fine.
Then we'll watch this and have a little chat after that if required.
A very high level, so you get the basic idea what you can do with Platform of Trust. Here we go. In the heart of everything is the identity network, the so-called digital twin, a digital representation of real-world objects and their relations between one another. With this model, you can describe pretty much any real-world object, like a real estate, a sports field, an airport, a harbor, you name it, even people and their body parts. But let's stick with the built environment for now. A digital twin is required to form a logical framework where data from different data source systems can be linked in. The digital twin is stored within Platform of Trust, and it only includes the information required to identify, classify, and model the real-world objects. All the other data is always fetched from external data source systems dynamically when needed. This leads us to the more interesting concept of data product, which describes a set of data fetched from an external system that is connected to a part of the digital twin. We can, for example, have indoor conditions from a specific room or even from a specific sensor that can then be linked to a room, so we know from which room we get those indoor conditions. We can have energy consumption from a building or even on room level. We can have building's evacuation plan fetched dynamically when needed. The sky is the limit when we come up with ideas of data that is related, for example, to a building. Platform of Trust also has an ontology team that is constantly working on standardized data products, but you will hear more from that on a different presentation. Every data product is connected to an external data source system, and for that purpose, we need a component called connector. And what does the connector do exactly? First of all, it verifies the data fetching requests it gets from Platform of Trust. And then it, of course, takes care of the muscle work of fetching the actual data from the external data source system and converting that data into Platform of Trust's standardized format. Finally, it will sign the response with its own private key and send it back to Platform of Trust and the customer that was requesting the data. Here is an example how all of this could be utilized in an interoperable way in some customer case. We could have the customer who owns the buildings and all of their data using that data in different applications. They could have some sort of smart applications and analytics tools or anything. And they could also use the Platform of Trust to share that same data to their different customers or partners they are working with, like some building maintenance providers, housing companies, even the tenants of the building could have some parts of the data available in some application or system they are using. And the best part of all of this is that whenever you connect a new data source into the building data, that data is automatically available for all the users should the customer so decide. Hopefully this gave you some kind of idea what Platform of Trust can be used for. And now let's all start planning for new kind of solutions with this ecosystem-driven way of development and make the world a better place.
Yes, that's the starting point. Do you have any questions related to the overall technical solution of platform of trust, or should I keep going with the connector component? I take silence as a sign of that you are all somehow familiar with the platform of trust overall solution, and we can proceed to the actual connector components. So I'll quickly show our developer portal, which has a lot of useful information for somebody who's starting to do some kind of development related to platform of trust. And here we will be using our guides, which give a step-by-step guide on performing different kind of operations with platform of trust. And for us, of course, the most important thing is setting up a connector or a translator, as it was previously known. But in the future, we will refer to this component with the term connector. But if you hear somebody talking about translators related to platform of trust, it basically means the same thing. So this is the part in between the data source systems and platform of trust. And here in this guide, we have some code examples on performing the required actions in the connector. So first of all, you receive the headers and the request payload from platform of trust broker API, and then you need to perform some kind of validation and verification on the headers. So at least you should check that the required headers, the signature and the application token are always included in the request. And then in addition to that, of course, use the platform of trust public key to verify the signature. And with those operations, you know that the request is valid and coming from platform of trust, and you can then proceed to processing the request. And the relevant part here is the parameter and data context. So every translator requires a connection to specific data product in platform of trust, as was presented in the video presentation that we began this webinar with. So we must define what kind of request is sent in, the format of the request that is sent into the connector, and as well as that, we need to define the content of the response the connector sends back to platform of trust. And those are currently specified in JSON LD format. I will show that in the demo part after this, but it's just important to know this, and once you get started with developing connectors, you will need to work with platform of trust ontology team to clarify the request and response formats required for the data product and the connector you are working with. And this is the standardization part. So we will be working on standardized data products so that everybody wouldn't have to invent the wheel again and again. But for example, for indoor conditions like temperature, humidity, CO2, we would have a prefixed format that everybody using those pieces of data could utilize the same format. And this is where the actual muscle work required from the connector happens, where you have to connect it to some third-party system, hopefully REST API, but there might be all kinds of SFTP or file-based solutions, who knows? But that's the part that doesn't interest Platform of Trust nor the end customer, as long as the data is retrieved in the standardized format. So you will connect the connector to some third-party system, get the data and convert it into the format specified in the data products output context. We will show that in the demo part, so you will get more idea about it. And then finally, once all this is done, it's time to form the actual response and sign it with your data product's private key, your connector's private key. And you send it back to Platform of Trust, and then the customer is happy. So that's the connector logic in a nutshell. And we also provide a translator or connector skeleton with Python. So if you are familiar with Python, that's probably a good starting point. So you can get a frame to develop your connector. And if at any time during the connector development you have any questions, you can always reach out to us for guidance. Great. Then I think we can jump into the next videos and demo part. Can you all still hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. It's quiet. I suppose that's the way it should be in a webinar, but just that I haven't messed up anything with the microphone, just checking from time to time. So let's go to the demo part. I will first show a little bit about the data product. So here we have an example data product of our own that is connected to our own test connector. And what this data product does, it fetches some basic company information from Finnish companies from this public register, PRH. Those of you working in Finland are probably familiar with PRH. So they have all the registered companies' data in Finland, and they handle some of it out freely. And here we have the product code that is used to identify the product, and the data context, so the output format, and the parameter context, which describes the input format, and then the translator URL, which specifies the connector, the endpoint this data product connects to when somebody wants to fetch data that is generated from this data product. And then, of course, the public key of your connector. So we can use that to verify the signature. And on the left side of the screen, I have JSON LD specs for the parameters, context, and the content, and then our general vocabulary for this. So here you can see that basically in order to fetch this company data, you need a timestamp, a product code, and then nested inside parameters, a business ID. And there is also this link to standards.oftrust.net/ontology/pot JSON-LD, which is the vocabulary that all these that have the POT prefix in front of them, all these values are found. And let's see the content part then. Here's the same idea. So it specifies that we will have an items list coming back from the connector, and nested inside that will be company name, business ID, company form, and registration date. And then finally, we can quickly take a look at the global vocabulary we have. So there are some other global links specified here in the beginning, and then somewhere in these more than 1,000 lines, we can find the business ID and the company form and the other keys that are used in the parameters JSON-LD and the content JSON-LD. This is very vague and kind of loose way to specify it used in this example, but in the future we will take this into more detailed level, like we can more clearly specify what kind of values fit into each key. So that's the basics of a data product. So whenever you create a connector, you then need to have a data product that matches to it in order to use that connector within a platform of trust ecosystem. So this is the basic data set required for a data product to describe how to make the connector connection. And then let's jump into the demo part, fetching the company data with our broker API. Let's start with our API documentation on docs-of-trust.net. So if you want to get more familiar with Platform of Trust APIs, you can find the documentation, up-to-date documentation in this site. And this is the documentation of Broker API. So we can see that if somebody wants to fetch data through Platform of Trust, what they need to include in the request, they need to have this signature and then the application token to identify which application is requesting data. And then there's also an optional parameter of user token to specify the end user logged in Platform of Trust user if required by the connector. And then in the request body will be the actual JSON input of the request. And here on the left side of the screen, I have a sample JSON request and then a simple Python script to generate my signature. So for the signature, I need my application client's password or secret, and then the actual JSON payload, which are included in the signature. And now I'll just use that script to create the signature, and then we can try out a Broker API request. I like to use Insomnia. Some people prefer Postman. There might be other options as well, but personally, I have grown fond of Insomnia, so I'm using it for this demo. And now, if I put the signature generated here in the headers, I already have my application token there. I send the request, and you can see that it returns the basic data from our company Platform of Trust from the PRH API. And then we'll mix things a little just to find out if this works and that to show that this demo isn't some hard-coded values, but this data product and broker API can actually be used. So Platform of Trust's mother company in our group is called Vastuu Group. So let's try to insert Vastuu Group's business ID. I get some random pop-up from Sublime Text. That's fine. And you can see that the signature value is now a little different than before. Let's take it and paste it here in the headers in Insomnia and try out the request. And see that it fails. Signature validation doesn't go through. Why is that? Now the thing is that this JSON payload is also included in the signature. So it will verify that the payload sent in the request and the one in the signature matches. So now that I've uploaded the payload in the request as well, I can confirm that I get data of Vastuu Group from that connector also. So that's it in a nutshell. I think I speed up so fast that we don't need to use the whole hour for this, but that's like the quick introduction to connector components, how they are connected to Platform of Trust overall solution and how they work in practice. And I will provide all this material to everyone interested after this session, so you can try things out for yourself. But that's everything from my presentation part. And now if you have any questions, I can answer the first ones here in this session. And then if you come up with questions later on, you can ask them in our Slack. And we can continue with the discussions online after this session. But does anybody have any questions or comments related to connector development currently?
Yeah, I have one question. Does the translator have to do something with the export, the app token and the user token? Is there some validation that has to be done?
Not currently. It's just you can use that information. We can discuss that on a case-by-case basis, but that's probably something we will look more into in the future. Like, is there some specific rules and patterns that need to be followed in certain cases or in all cases?
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question. Anyone else? So then I'll suggest that I will, as a reply to the calendar invitation to this webinar, I will send all of you the material we went through. I know that I went through it quite fast, and if you haven't been familiarizing yourself with this previously, it might have been quite at a quick pace. So you can go through all the material with your own time and schedule, and then come back to us with more questions later on.
I have a small question. I'm from Metatawa company, and I think you have been contacting Mikko Lampi before, but I'm also in this project. So could you please include my email into the into your list so I could get all the material as well?
Yes, I will make sure that I do. And I saw that many of the people we sent the original invitation have forwarded it. So I will try to harvest every forwarded email I can see from the invitation and from my email to the list that I will send the material.
Okay, thanks.
And if any of you online now doesn't receive the material, please ask your contact person if for some reason I have not had your email included in the response. But hey, I thank you all for your time and hope to see many of you working on Platform of Trust connectors and hope to be able to collaborate with you in the connector development in the future. Have a nice day and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.